I was a college student at the University of the Cumberlands. Now it was Cumberland College at the time. I was I had been there 3 years. I was not. I was drifting. I was not focused, and also I had a premonition that I was going to go to Vietnam while I was there. And I'd flunked out at the University of Houston, Texas, gone home to the farm for a while, was getting ready to be drafted a second time, and I went to Cumberland and was on and off probation for 3 years there. Had a great time. The rivers and streams and outdoors were fabulous, but I could not focus and function. And so I had this dream in October, and in December I got a notice to take a physical for the for the Army, and the letter said that I would be after the physical that I would be drafted in June. And so I started looking for a way out. But I had run all of these years from that responsibility, and there was no place to go. And I happened to run into a boyhood friend who was home on leave from Navy, and he recommended that I join the Navy. And so I figured the Navy was the lesser of four evils. The Air Force was flying over, the Marine Corps was right in the middle of it, and the Army was there as well. Navy had to be on a boat somewhere. And so I decided to join the Navy, and that's when I found out what a Navy corpsman was. A Navy corpsman is a medic for the Marines in the jungle of Vietnam. I became a medic or a corpsman. So I went to the Navy boot camp and to hospital corps school. And I jumped from the frying pan right into the fire.
I was athletic in school, and I had the abilities to do a lot of things that normal people couldn't do. Let's see. Yeah, I squatted 530 pounds in high school. I run track. I didn't break the world record until I was in the Philippines. But I just felt the Marine Corps would be a good thing. But I really didn't want to join because I just didn't want to join. But the recruiters kept hounding me. And I moved out from my foster parents' home and found a place on my own. And the recruiters still found me. And I joined. Finally, I raised my hand and swore I do.
I was in high school, and I wasn't quite 18 when I graduated, so I had to wait till I was 18 before I could join. Girls at that time had to be 18, but the guys didn't.
When I graduated from high school, I spent about a year in college at Ohio University, and I really wasn't attuned to handling the college work. I was just a goof off from the get-go and didn't do real well. And at the end of the first year in college, I decided to go into the military. So I enlisted in the Army in 1962, June 1st, 1962. My first assignment was I went to a testing facility in Cleveland, Ohio, because I had applied to be a counterintelligence officer, and that went by the wayside later on. But initially, they tested me and so forth, and I knocked the charts off for some reason. I must have had a good day.
I graduated in May or somewhere there, and I had gotten drafted. And I had my draft number, and it was 60 something. I don't recall exactly, but I was going somewhere. And so later on, I got to thinking about it and decided I'd rather, since I'm going, I think I'll make my choice to where I'm going to go. So I chose to go to the Air Force. And the Air Force recruiter said, I'll take care of the rest of that. That's okay. So anyway.
Well, for one thing, I knew I was going to be drafted. Because, and plus two, at school, they had a career day, and they had all the branches of the service there. And this will be a good one. But the reason I liked the Marine Corps was their uniforms. I liked the uniforms. And how snapped to it was. I mean, that depressed me. It really did. And so, I mean, I was 17, wanting to sign up. And that they had what they call a 120-day delay program. That means you've got to stay in school and graduate before they'll let you in. So that's good incentive right there, you know. I'm starting to lose track here. Oh yeah, at first mom wouldn't let me because, you know, she didn't want to see me go. But I said, Mom, the draft's going to get me anyway. Let me go now where I can choose where I want to go. So we went ahead and done that. And I got into boot camp, and about 2 weeks while I was in boot camp, Mom sent me my draft notice. The drill instructor asked me what I wanted to do. I said, well, I'm already here. It'd be foolish to go somewhere else. And he just winked at me. He said, smart move, son.
Boot camp is just chaos initially. But you come together as a unit. And I discovered that just when you got it all down and it's no big deal, I mean, you can do it all, it's time to leave.
When I departed for the boot camp, I got on an airplane and they flew me to Louisville, I believe. Stayed in a YMCA there that night. Then got on another plane and went to Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. And when we got off the plane, we had to line up and you go through the routine of getting behind and anyway, getting in line and going through that routine of introductory to the Air Force or basic training, shave your head and so forth. And then after the basic training was over with, and it really wasn't that bad, except for the intimidation part. You know, they want to break you down, and then they want to build you back up the way they want you. And a lot of guys had problems with that. A lot of guys didn't. So it just all depends on who you were, and the best thing to do is don't ever draw attention to yourself. And that way you can get by a lot easier. But if you draw attention to yourself about something, get ready. It's coming.
I took my basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky, and that was a wild wing thing for me. I was about halfway through my basic training, and the CO saw I had done some high school football and was 6'5", and he thought, wow, perfect end. So he assigns me this job as an end on his squad, and after regular hours, we'd go out and play football against other teams. And as luck would have it, about the second catch I made, this 300-pound major landed on my shoulder and broke it in about 3 different places back there. And so my whole goal shifted at that point. They put me in a Valpo cast, which is a rascal that it leaves your hand out, but that's about it. Everything else is plaster up to your neck. And the CO told me, he says, well, if you want to continue on your MOS, he said, you're going to have to pass the basic training course here. And I said, okay, no problem. He says, well, you realize, he says, you got to take a mile run and you got to do it under 5 minutes. You got to disassemble and assemble an M1 rifle in less than 5 minutes. And you got to do the obstacle course, which is dodging in or out of these things. And I did all that in a Valpo cast. And so I graduated from basic training. And upon graduating, I got the bad news that I would have to enlist for another 2 years so that I could get over my physical infirmities. And I told them, well, I'm not real keen on that. So they they shipped me to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and I went to advanced infantry training back in my infantry role, and didn't go into counterintelligence, didn't become an officer at that point.
I adapted pretty well. I grew up in a home that was pretty strict on rules, but some of the girls had trouble because of the rules that they would have. You know, there was no talking to the men. Like if you went to the store, if you were allowed to go to the store, you couldn't talk to the men. And like when you went through line on the food, you couldn't ask them what the food was or anything. You just took it. And but so I adapted okay to it. And the barracks, you know, it was pretty nice in a way. I mean, you had 2 to room. It wasn't an open barracks like some of the men have. We had to get up and go to the chow hall in the morning for your breakfast and your lunch. And the women at that point in time, because that was back in Vietnam era time, I served during the Vietnam era, and it was in the early 70s. We didn't get up to fix the food. The men did. And I understand that now it's changed so that the men don't do all the food, that the women have to get up and do some of the food too. The food was pretty good. The physical regiment was hard and basic because you had the marching and stuff like that. But and then they had exercises they were supposed to do, and so they kept you busy, you know, with what they wanted you to do. And but I was okay with the food. It was not exciting, but it wasn't bad either.
The different things that we did, we had classroom. You know, we were learning everything about being a sailor and rules. We had the the Blue Jackets manual, which was the manual that we were to go by. Everything about the laws and the rules and regulations was in that. But we went to different classes, and so all of that. It was just a routine, and you had to memorize. I can't remember just what it was, but I had it down then. You know, they'd ask you a question about whatever it is that you were supposed to know from that book, and if you didn't have it, you had to give them 50 push-ups, you know, or something like that. If you were bad enough, they would go to happy hour, and happy hour was PT, and it was an hour of intense physical training. I didn't like to go to happy hour, but I was really capable of doing anything physical. First of all, I was about 7 years older than most of the guys that were there. I was 25 when I went in. I had been able to evade the draft for quite a while. And so I was 25, but also I had been on the judo team at Cumberland. And so I was in very good physical shape. I could do anything anybody could do. And in fact, I was a squad leader. I led a squad of guys like myself in PT and just a whole bunch of other stuff. That was always fun to me. It was not bad. So,
Well, the barracks were Quonset huts. And I think there was like 75 of us in our company. It was platoon 3055. Company, I forget the company's name right off, number. And we were just at row of bunks on each side, one top the other. And that's back when the Marine Corps was very, very physical. You do what you're told. You don't ask questions. You get up and go. And I mean go. And the first night we got there about like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. By the time we got to hit the bunks, it was like 5 o'clock. And then about 6 o'clock, they got us back up. Every one of us, black and blue, trying to pinch ourselves to wake up from that dream. But You had to be on your toes.
Barracks was real good. It was real nice. It was clean, of course. You know it was clean. Boot camp wasn't too bad physically. Mentally, it had took a toll on me because I remember laying in the bed at night and asking God. I'd say, Lord, what have I done to deserve this? I have to laugh at myself. It was a little rough mentally. Even though I was raised rough, it had its mental issues. Other than that, after a while, I got used to it. Well, of course, you're being resocialized. So I got resocialized and become a Marine. Remember graduation day, they finally called us Marines instead of the bad words. But boot camp was not too bad.
My duties were repairing aircraft where they've been the ones in Vietnam where we got shot. You know, we'd repair them of the bullet wounds and brakes and structures and so forth. We just had different repairs on aircrafts that I made because I became a structural repairman, and so that's what we were specialized in. And I enjoyed that. It was all right.
When I first got there, I was a brand new corpsman. Nobody knew me. In fact, there was a Doc Fisher who had been there, and he was so great that you would have thought he was divine. They just talked about how great he was and what a good doc he was. And as all I'd had was theory. I'd never seen a blood. I'd never fixed a blister. I hadn't done anything. And it made me feel very small. I knew I had the training. I just hadn't had the experience. And so, but anyway, I walked in a hooch one evening and the guys were playing back alley bridge. It's a game that I don't even know what it is today, but it was a Marine Corps card game that was a heck of a lot of fun. And so these four Marines were sitting down. They had this light hanging down from the ceiling that was a bare bulb over them, and they were playing. And so when I went in, then they started grilling me, about who I was, where I was. It's the routine thing where you grill a new guy. A new guy is one that doesn't know anything. He comes in with clean, starched, pressed stuff. And these guys are in grungy, what we call salty clothes in Nam. Their boots are bleached out and have salt on them. Their clothes can sometimes have salt on them if they don't have it because you sweat so much. So as I walked in, somebody said, "Hey, Doc," asked me where I was from and said, "Doc, do you smoke pot?" I said, "No, I don't smoke pot." They said, "Well, do you drink Jim Beam?" I said, "Nope, I don't drink Jim Beam or Jack Daniels. It makes you do things that you wish you hadn't done." "Well, do you screw the Sickalo girls?" And they were the prostitutes that went around from one place to another. They had a pimp who drove the bike, and they rode on behind, and they would go to a place and they would have sex with as many Marines as they could have sex with, and they would come back from time to time, and they took advantage of it. Most of them did. And I won't say most, but many. I said, "No, I don't do that either, because they leave you with diseases you wish you didn't have," and many did. They said, "Oh, well, wait till you hear, Doc. You'll be doing all that. You'll be doing all that before you go home. It just happens." I said, "Take a good look, man. This is one man that's not going to be doing that. I have a precious wife at home, and I can wait till I get home." And from that, I got the title of preacher.
I was reassigned to Fort Rucker, Alabama, of all crazy places. Fort Rucker is the training center for helicopter pilots and pilot insertion. I didn't think I wanted to be a pilot at the time. I have somewhat vertigo if I go too fast in one direction, so I didn't want to do that. But anyway, we were the support services for the helicopter airborne groups that eventually went to Vietnam. And one day I was sitting at a cafeteria table, and the CO walked in. And it was unusual to see him anywhere because he took lots of time off. He loved going down to Panama City Beach, and we were close by. And so he walked up to us, and me and another guy, he says, "You two are the ones I want to see." He says, I'm overstaffed, and he says, "I'm shipping two of you out. And one of you is going to go to the DMZ in Korea. The other is going to go into Schofield Barracks in Hawaii." And I said, "Wow." We flipped a coin, and it's the only coin toss in my whole life I've ever won. I went to Schofield Barracks in Hawaii. Rapidly was promoted to a Spec 4 rank, and I just it was all, everything we did there was in preparation for shipping the whole division over to Vietnam, and it was an interesting tour, to say the least. In the beginning, we did a bunch of assaults on beaches and so forth, and with my shoulder still not 100%, that was a trick, getting up and down the rope ladders. And
I was a personnel specialist, so I did a lot of filing at first, and then I moved to another office where I made name tags, I made dog tags, I helped people fill out their dream sheet that they called where they wanted to go, and did a little bit of counseling for humanitarian, but if it didn't fall within the regulations, they did not get it. Very few really got moved to another base.
So I served Bethesda, and then I went back with the Marines. I made a med cruise with the Marines. I observed the Marines. I learned that the Marines weren't fighting other people or other things that fight each other. Their boot camp is so intense that, I mean, the worst person to confront is a boot right out of boot camp in the Marine Corps. He thinks he can fight a buzzsaw and come out on top, and they don't care. They don't mind getting beaten. But they'll sure get their licks in before they do. That's just the way they are. But so I learned to work with them, and I learned to love them.
And when I got out in the Marine Corps, it turned out to be even better, even though I was in a foreign country. I got in trouble a lot. I fought a lot. I liked to fight. Or I didn't like to. I had to. And first sergeant would get on to me all the time. "What'd you fight for this time?" My reply would be, like if it's a military person like a Navy, he said, "You Marines think you're bad, you're nothing," and here it would go. It would be on. And then out on the island after midnight, it was real dangerous because we had martial law at that time. President Marcos back in 76 and 77, he was a real ruthless leader of the country. But I survived it. I just learned to fight to survive, and had a lot of Filipino friends. And
there wasn't nothing really exciting per se, and that was good. That was really nice. We had things to take place, but nothing critical other than bombs. They'll shoot rockets in on us. There were 17 different times they dropped rockets in on our base, and that was just to get your attention. You never, first time you hear a bang of any sort, you go to the ground. One day we were in chow hall, and it was a big chow hall, and it was filled up. I'll never forget this. I'll never forget that happening. There was maybe 75 or 100 of us or whatever was in there. A boom went off, and I still recall all the heads. Everybody went straight down immediately, altogether. And they were destroying some ordnance right over next to us and didn't tell us they were going to do that. So that was a moment. Some things like that you don't forget. And when the rockets come in, you know where to go. As you go underneath your bed if you're in bed. You don't think, you just roll in there.
There is a peaking in preparation, and every athlete goes to, so he's working to this stage so that when he is in a major tournament, he is at his peak in performance, in muscle memory, in mind and body coordination. 5% of it is getting the body in shape, and 5% of it is getting the body in shape, and 95% of it is getting the mind and the body to work together so that they actually just, everything is so precise. Well, the warrior is the same way. He is preparing and preparing and preparing for battle. He doesn't know what he's going to get into. It doesn't hit him until he's there. And he is green and in danger. His first month is the most dangerous time for him because he's learning what not to do and what to do. And the hardest thing for new guys is to get down, get behind, and to respond immediately and not later. You find people when they come back to the United States. When I came back to the United States, I was on the floor, on the ground a lot of times at a backfire, at fireworks or something like that. You become from dull to instantaneous action. And so a person coming back from battle is not one to trifle with, is not one to joke with in any way, needs to be respected and appreciated. And I've had many laugh at me for doing that, but they don't understand. They haven't been there.
I've done a lot of, I was a driver for a tank maintenance crew. And I started out at Dong Ha. They had a place up there. And we went out different areas. We went up to a place called Charlie 2. And we started getting shelled up there. And that was my first incident of being, hearing that stuff. And I tried to run and hide. I jumped under my truck to hide from safety. And first thing I know, somebody grabbed my feet and drug me up from under there and dug to another place because he said that's the worst place to hide is under that truck. And, well, as I told him, I said, well, as you can see, I'm a greenhorn. I'm still learning this stuff. He said, well, I'm trying to teach you.
The routine is generally either so slow that just nothing is happening. Nothing is happening. And then the opposite of that is extremely high adrenaline, intense high adrenaline, and and animal awareness. I mean, just being sensitive to everything. And so you have this going back and forth. This comes from patrols, ambushes, firefights, things that's just nothing's happening. All of a sudden it explodes in front of you. It's like a firework, actually. You light the firework and nothing happens. And it doesn't happen for a long time sometimes. And then all of a sudden it just blows up all over the place. That was kind of like it was. So what we developed was an animal kind of instinct where we were always on guard for anything to happen. And you live that way. And so I developed that mentality, which became a part of me for the 6 months I was in Nam, because much of that, if not most of it, was in the jungle or on patrol in very dangerous areas.
But this boy's name was Hightower. That's the only name other than the Marine Corps. Other than the drill instructors. That's the only name I remember is Hightower. Tall, fair skinned, kind of like red hair, kind of. And he was in country quite a bit longer than I was, so he kind of helped teach me the ropes. And he really helped me out. And really saved me a lot of time there. Because there was one other time we had pulling guard duty for the Seabees, and they decided to send some of us out on a recon. And it's a moonlit night, so it wasn't real dark. And then we run into some noise, and next thing we know, had a little firefight going. Me, I was scared to death. I didn't know what to do. I got face to face with one of them in the BC. And I could tell he was scared too, because me and him, we just stood there stared at each other. And Hightower come up from behind me and shot him. And I looked at Hightower, I said, man, does it get any easier? He said, no, it don't. These guys that says it's easy, it gets easier, he said, be careful of them, they're psycho. They want to kill people. But it just, it just seemed like it took forever. We was out 3-4 hours, all that going on, and finally calmed down somewhat, and we made our way back to the CBs. And one of the other guys was already there sleeping. He heard us walk in, and to tell you how bad that stuff gets on you, that bull was sleeping with his weapon. And when we walked in, made a little bit of a noise, I did, and that Hightower told me, he said, get down, get away. That guy jumped up on me, started shooting. He opened up all around that tent before he realized what he was doing. And Hightower told me, he said, right there, that's what'll happen to you. It will get to you. Sooner or later, it will get to you. Because I even done the same thing once. I was real bad, sleepy. I didn't get a chance to rest at all. And me and a couple other guys was sent to a little place called Fubai, to full guard duty. And I was sitting there fighting, trying my best to stay awake, but I did nod off. I nodded off like that. Next thing I know, I felt something job me in my back right here. I whipped around with my weapon, pulled the trigger, and it went click. And when I really realized what I was doing, the officer of the day, he was staring down the barrel of that weapon, M16. He was staring down the barrel of that thing. I mean, if that thing hadn't missed fire, I'd have killed him right there. And he's the one that put me on guard duty, and I tried to tell everybody that I was so sleepy I couldn't wake up, can't stay awake for whatever reason it was. And anyway, he tried to get me rolled up over that, but there's another captain. I mean, seemed like he's just like that other captain, nicest people I've ever seen, good, understanding. And I told him what happened. I said I couldn't stay awake. I'd done everything but smoke, and you're not allowed to smoke. Every time you light, you have to make sure you cover everything up, because in the dark of night like that, you'd be surprised how that little bitty light can be seen way out yonder somewhere. And that'll be a clear target for them to hit you. So, I mean, just different odd things like that, it happened to you. Because I know I've never seen the worst of everything. But it's bad for me, though, I'm telling you.
1 week out of the month, we had to go to the field, and had to lay with a federal guard at that time. It's what he was called, a Filipino. He was an elderly man, about my age now, in his 60s. And the first week or so, it was a little bit rough because the snake would crawl across your feet. And he would constantly tell me, don't worry, just don't move, be real still. I finally got used to it. One memorable thing about that being close to the jungle there was, this hurts. When he told me about his father, when Pearl Harbor was bombed and the Japanese took over the Philippines, and some people might have heard of the Death March and all that stuff, and how the Japanese dig ditches. And, you mostly would shoot the men and let them drop in. But, I was just a teenager. I mean, he was a babe. He was a little boy. He told me about his father. When they cut his head off, his body fell in the ditch. One of the Japanese soldiers kicked his head in the ditch with him. We talked about a lot of stuff. Just things that I'll never forget. Even though I wasn't there, I wasn't even born yet. But he told me about the stories.
A chaplain flew in from the base out. He flew into our area. It was an isolated area, but it was Vietnamese NVA all around. And so it was Sunday morning, and I went to go to church. We had a great Methodist pastor there, Chaplain Scott, Stan B. Scott. He was a captain, and he never carried a weapon. He said, if I need a weapon, there'll be one beside me. And because somebody would have been killed, he would get their weapon. But he did go on patrol with them. I don't think he went on ambush, but he did go on patrol with them a time or two. Wasn't supposed to do that. But anyway, so I went in, and Chaplain Scott said, Doc, why don't you go see if you can round up some folks for church? There wasn't anybody there, and he's getting ready to start. So I went from the hooch to hooch and started knocking on the doors and going in and inviting them to church to worship. He hadn't been there in a long time. We hadn't been a worship service. I went into this one hooch, and there were 1, 2, 3, 4 guys in there. They were playing rock music, and it was early rock, 60s rock. It wasn't any of the heavy stuff later on. But so they were playing rock music, and I went in and I said, men, Chaplain Scott is here, and we're setting up for worship, and I just wanted to invite you to worship. And they were smoking. They weren't smoking pot. I'm sure they could, but they weren't that day because you can smell pot. It's super strong. So they were smoking cigarettes and playing the music. And I said, man, he doesn't come often, and he's here, and this is a good time to go to worship. They said, Doc, get out here and leave us alone. We're listening to some good sounds. I said, okay, man. So I went to worship. There were 5 servicemen and 1 officer there out of all those folks. So afterwards, I don't know what made me do it, but I went back to that hooch. And they were playing the Iron Butterflies in Negata de Vida. The guy, there's a 20-minute drum solo. I'm sorry. There's a 4-minute drum solo. It's a 20-minute song, 4-minute drum solo. And the man that was ahead of it, his father was a Methodist pastor, actually. And he became a musician and played the organ just tremendously. And it's a great piece of music. But now I always see it as a funeral fugue. That's the way I see it and still hear it. But so I went back to tell them about what he was talking about. I just shared his message with them, and they got very upset with me. And one young man who was the M79 man, M79 looks like a sawed-off shotgun. It shoots a shell about that big around. After 13 revolutions, it will explode. It won't explode before then. I don't know what the technology was, but he carried that. And to do that, you have to have a bag that carries rounds like that, and they can carry as much as 30 rounds of those, and they have high, HE, which is high explosive, Willie Peter, which is white phosphorus, and illumination rounds. So all those would be used in his bag of rounds. And Kinsel, in fact, I have a picture of him on the practice field firing as M79. And so as I went back in and started sharing with him, Kinsel finally got very frustrated with me, and he came over and said, "Doc, won't you just leave us alone? We are listening to good sounds, and it was good sound." But I said, "Kinsel, we go on ambush, we go on patrol, we go on firefights, and somebody doesn't come back. Do you ever think about eternity in your life?" He looked at me just very sternly and straight and said, "Doc, I'm 19 years old. I've got a lot of wild oats to sow, and I'll cross that bridge when I come to it." I mean, that was very final, and I walked out and regret that I did not ever go back in. So 3 weeks later, then, or so, not long, we were choppered to what we call Barrier Island. It was a strip of island a mile or so long. The Americal Division, which is made up of the Aussies, Australian, and Army, came in at some time previously, and the NVA had come in there and dug a whole little city underground. So they had what they call spider holes, where they could slip in and go underground and have all their livelihood, and they could disappear and you wouldn't even see them. But outside, they would have little gardens. They had wind dikes that were 10 feet high. That's about as high as the ceiling, not quite as high, but 10 feet high. And they were big, and they were wind breaks to break the wind. And then behind those, they would have little yards and gardens, and they would live lives out there. And then the men would shoot and sniper and everything there. Well, among those were snipers as well. So, but we were on that island. We'd been transported to that island. They'd taken heavy casualties, and so the company left there, and we went in, and so the company, we were fan firing, and fan firing is where we were walking in a line, and the ones in the line were fan firing with M60s or AK, not AKs, but M16s. And I remember walking through a clearing, thought I saw a man on a wind dike, and he was it was a bush, but it was like a man. But as I came through this clearing, this sandy stuff, I heard this right in front of me, and the sand kicked up. I didn't hear him shoot, but because they were firing in the front. And then another lad behind me was Ken Tanaka, Doc Tanaka. He was a Japanese corpsman from he's from San Diego. He's from LA, from Los Angeles. And so he came through and was telling me what he saw and felt. And I said, I did the same thing, So they were there firing at us. And a little bit later, as we went on, I heard firing and then major explosions. And then I heard corpsman up from a sister squad. And I thought, well, they got a corpsman there, so he'll take care of him. But it never happened. So when I ran over to it, and they had hit, excuse me, they had hit Kinsel's bag of rounds, and it just exploded all over the place and killed him. He didn't look real. He looked like a deflated mannequin. And And then and behind him was a young man named Joe Norwood who'd been in country 6 weeks, but he'd only been with us about 2 or 3, and I just had got to know him just a little bit, and I really liked him. He was from Texas, and but a shard from that had hit him in the temple, and I went to him and worked for an hour to save him. The choppers came but would not come down because it was a hot zone, and he died in my arms. And we had been through a lot of intense stuff for a long time, and I broke down and cried. I remembered immediately Kinsel's last words to me, and and I just wept, and I was just. And you don't do that that shows a vulnerability. It also takes your mind off the intensity of the danger at the time, and you can endanger others. But I couldn't help it, and so I broke down and cried, and I said, God, why? These men are the best specimens that we have to offer, and they just seemed like worthless sacrifices. And and Babyface, who's in the book and probably one of still the dearest friend, we still love each other. We always kiss each other on the cheek when we see each other. Precious. He lives in Michigan. But so Babyface came over and consoled me. And God didn't answer that question then, but he did answer it later. So when Joe died in my arms and I cried, that was the pivotal point, probably even of my post-traumatic stress, because it wasn't a big wound, it wasn't bad and bloody. It was just a little thing in his temple. There was just a little trickle of blood. And when I went to the psychiatrist after I got back for post-traumatic stress, he was a great, great doctor in Knoxville. He has since passed away. But he was telling me about people with post-traumatic stress. It's not generally on a whole lot of things that they focus on. It's one thing, one simple thing. And when I told him that was what was my problem, and it has always been and has been there until I got the book written. Getting the book written helped me to kind of put it aside.
We was at Dong Hong. They had about 5 or 6 trucks. I was the lead truck. And it's going to be an open convoy. And we was about getting ready to go. My truck quit. Couldn't get it started. So they put me in the back of the line trying to get it fixed. And that next driver, young boy, hit a landmine. Killed him. I never could understand that. He's a good boy. I never did know his name. Never knew his name. Up until here recently, I don't know how you all are on dreams, but I believe in dreams. And I had a dream the other day that I seen him for the first time, seeing his face. Still don't know his name. He's just a young boy like me, just 18-year-old. Yeah. I mean, it's a good thing you all are doing here, because kids nowadays, they need to know. And a lot of kids they ain't got the first clue about war. They don't know the first thing about it. All they want to do is get out and have fun, get in trouble, and complain about their rights. And they ain't got a first clue how they even got their rights. But I never forget that. Never forget that. That boy died in my place. He died in my place. I always wondered why I always was left to live. Yeah. That's what I got several things about that got me so guilty. I can't handle it. Even when I come home for Dad's funeral, I had every intention of thinking I was coming back. But it turns out that I had to stay home. And I found out a couple of weeks later, about a week or so there, wasn't long, that where I was stationed at Quang Creek Province, is right across the road from a CB battalion. They got overran by Charlie. And intense casualties. I could have went back. I should have went back. Maybe I could have done something, helped out, made a difference. I don't know. I feel so guilty over that. I can't handle it. I can't forgive myself. Last time we was here, one of your other girls was here, and she told me, she said, "Chad, you need to try to forgive yourself." I said, I can't forgive myself. I won't forgive myself. It's just a hard thing to explain. You work together. You got a camaraderie, what they call camaraderie. Your friends, you look out for one another, watch each other's back. If someone's sick, they can't get up and do anything, you take his place without even being wait to ask. You just jump right in, take his place. I mean, it's just hard to explain.
We shipped out the Chinese to Vietnam, and then went back to Hawaii. In the meantime, doing all that training, I attained the rank of Sergeant E5 in about 20 months, which at the time was sort of a world-class record. I have a gift for gab, and I talk to everybody. So it blessed me at that point anyway. And I heard one day they were doing a TDY, which was a support mission to Vietnam, and I went and did about 12 weeks over there. And it wasn't real hot at the time. Most of my crew was doing airborne pickup and delivery operations with helicopters, and I saw what was coming, that's for sure. And had an interview with General William Westmoreland, who wanted my MOS. He wanted me to stay over there. And he was leaning on everybody out in the line of people who were supposed to go home because our enlistment had run out. And he promised us everybody but the kitchen sink to try to get us to stay. And I kind of saw the writing on the wall. These folks weren't getting the kind of support I wanted when I first went over there. And I got a real education in Vietnamese history when I was over there, and felt we were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and decided to end my enlistment. So I flew back to San Francisco to get out of the military. I served 3 full years on a voluntary enlistment, and I just, in some ways, I regret that, leaving, because I kind of left everybody else there. But I kissed the ground in San Francisco and boarded that plane. And I picked up several medals. I didn't totally deserve all of them, but sometimes you get a medal in the Army for just being there. And I had a good conduct medal. I had an air medal, and had a couple other Southeast Asia medals as well. And I kind of put those away.
I became a military wife instead of in the military and stayed home. I got out because after we got married, I wound up getting pregnant, and they at that time didn't let you stay in and be pregnant, or I guess you would stay in and be pregnant, but once you had the child, you would have to sign papers that somebody else could take care of the child. So I got out, and I saw the papers a long time afterwards, and it said unfit for duty because I was pregnant. But that was a long time ago. That was back in the 70s. Things have changed a whole lot since then.
Well, that day I was at Quang Tri Province. It wasn't Quang Tri City now, it was Quang Tri Province, like out in the rural area, kind of. And I went to, I was doing the mail orderly thing, and I was come back with the mail. And then I think it was a lieutenant. He called me up to his hut, and he said, "I got some bad news for you." I said, "Well, what is it?" I said, "Well, your dad died, got killed on a farm tractor, and my brother was with him, but my brother was okay." And I stood there kind of dumbfounded at first because I didn't really know what to say. And she said, "You need to get your gear together. We're going to send you home for the funeral." And so I just got a little bit because I figured I was coming back anyway. So I didn't load up everything, and it took me a while to get home everything. And then I found out later that the Red Cross, Mom called the Red Cross and had a hard time getting a hold of me, trying to find me, and they had me listed MIA. And I wasn't. I mean, I was right there at Quang Tri, but they just had misinformation. And that scared Mom even more. And plus my sister, she went into an extreme asthmatic attack. She was in the hospital. And I mean, it's all it could take for Mom to hold herself together. But anyway, I finally come home, but they held the funeral so long that they wouldn't do it anymore. So they went ahead and had the funeral. When I got home, it was a day after the funeral, so I missed the funeral altogether. But we kind of sit and talked a while and everything, and then Mom said, she said, "I need you here," which I was the oldest at the time. My sister, sister was 16, and my brother, he was like 14 or 15, and then I had another brother, he's just about like 8 years old. And I said, "Well, we'll have to see what we can do." And about it was really every day I had to call in, check in, make sure I wasn't going AWOL. That's just the way they do things. But I called in every day, and I asked them what do I need to do to apply for a hardship discharge. And I told them the situation, and he told me all the stuff what we had to do. And so me and Mom, we had to go to Great Lakes Naval Base in Illinois. So we had to go there and apply for everything. And in the meantime, that's when I found out about the VC overran Quang Tri Province. And man, I about lost it there because I knew a lot of them boys right there. I mean, every one of them are good guys. And I hated to hear that. And that's when I really started thinking. I said, man, I should have went back. I told Mom, I said, Mom, I know you needed me and all that, but I should have went back. I mean, there's something I could have done to help them, you know. But obviously it wasn't meant to be, but still, I've got that guilt. I won't, I'll always have it. I'll always have that guilt.
After the lieutenant and the colonel conferred, then I was to get everybody to be medevac that could not force march for 3 days. So I had a lot of jungle rot, and jungle rot is where the disease, their skin is, I don't know what happens, but it sloughs up like a blister, and it will just slough off, and it continues to spread and spread. And so I had one young man. I've got a picture of him actually in one of my pictures. He's Doc Tanaka, the Japanese lad. He had jungle rot so bad I had to medevac him. His whole arm was just nothing but where the skin had sloughed off. But so I got those ready, and I had these two men that had had malaria, and I got those medevac. And so a big CH-46 came in, and a CH-46 has the two. It's a big one, and it has two propellers, rotors. And it was the trash of the Army. Marines always got the trash of the Army. We did more with less. However, so as this thing came in, and they just lumber in, you know, they just shake, and they're not the best, but they work. So we got all these men aboard, and then he just spiraled up, you know, and now it has to make circles to gain altitude. Right after he left, they started letting the mortars go. You know, it'd be a katoop, you know, and then you'd start screaming and coming in. And so they would fire, and then they would elevate it. It comes out of a tube, and it sits on this tube, and it's elevated. And they have these things here that can elevate it and make it go higher or lower. And so they would fire one and then elevate it and fire another and elevate it. And they walked 22 of those across the hill. And there were 20 something of us that were wounded. I was hit with the last two because I was on the far side of the hill. I told my kid brother when I went to Vietnam, Don, I said, if you hear that I'll be wounded, you'll know that I was wounded in the back because I'll be running for help. Of course, I said that as a joke. But we didn't dig in, so I was hugging the ground, and they landed just a little bit below me. They have a 25-meter killing range and a 50-meter wounding range, so I don't know how far down, but they were below. And so the first one got me in the head and the arm, a shrapnel from it, and the second one got me in the thorax, in the back, and the butt. And so I was critical. I couldn't go to them. I wasn't out. They could hear me. I could hear them. I couldn't see. It felt like I was hitting the head with a hammer, and I was hurting pretty bad. And so I just lay there, and I heard them yelling for me, Doc Edwards. And then finally, Babyface arrived, and Red arrived, Red Phillips, and so they came to me, and I was bleeding like a stuck hog because I was bleeding out of my head and my arms that had been hit. My back was hit, and took a big chunk out of my butt. And so they thought I was going to die. You don't give morphine for a head wound or a stomach wound, either one. And so finally the senior corpsman, Doc Pellegrini, came over, and Red said to him, you know, he needs some morphine. And because they thought I was going to die, they gave me the morphine anyway. Morphine gives you pinpoint pupils, so you can't tell if there's a concussion or anything. And morphine also dries up the salivary glands and the glands that lubricate the intestines and the stomach area. And so I had both of those wounds. But so they gave me that, and as a result, they stripped all my clothes off of me except my boots. I had boots on that were just about new. I had just gotten them broken in by walking about a half a mile in a creek, and they just fit like gloves after that. But I had this crazy thing from watching all these westerns when I was a kid that the dying cowboy didn't want to die with his boots on. So take my boots off. I could not get that out of my mind, and I made them take my boots off. They said, Doc, you'll be sorry. You could take these home with you or whatever. So they took my boots off. And on the way to the chopper, before the chopper came, I said to the guys, they said, Doc, the chopper's coming. He'll be here anytime. I said, men, before the chopper gets here, I'd like to pray together. If it's all right, would you guys join hands with me? These big, tough Marines. And they said, yes, we'll do it, Doc. So I said, Lord, we've been through this valley of death for a long time, and I'm going home. But these men have to go the rest of the way through the valley of death. Would you please go with them and bring them home? And so they put me in my just a poncho to carry me to the chopper. And so as they were carrying me, somebody let his corner down, and I started dragging on the bushes, and one of these Marines cussed real big and said, get that up, stop dragging Doc on the ground. And I told him, I guess I said, but he told me later, said, Doc, when I said that, you said, now you shouldn't be talking like that. So they got me over to the chopper and got me in. By that time, the morphine was starting to take place, to take effect. And when I got in there, I was, because there were two others in there, and I called to them, but nobody answered. So I didn't know if they were dead or not. As far as I know, they were alive, but I don't know who they were. And then I just went into a kind of a pool of black. And the next time I woke up, I was at the 1st Med Battalion. They were taking me over rough ground to this tent hospital. And this angelic creature was holding a bottle of fluid go into me because I lost a lot of blood. And he was a corpsman, an army medic, actually. And he said, Doc, don't worry. He said, you'll be okay. We're going to take care of you, and we'll send you on home. And so then after that, they had medevaced me over to the, that was 1st Med Battalion. Then I went to the hospital ship repos and was there. And when I came to, they had gone and done surgery on me and taken out my transverse colon and sewed me back up again and patched my holes and stuff. And I was hurting all over from more than anything else. But, and this little heavy-set nurse with a Dutch boy haircut was firm and tough, and I was very contentious. I had malaria. When I came out of that, I had malaria. And so I was suffering just with a whole bunch of stuff. She was a God-sent angel. She was so tough, though. But she got me through it.
The one thing I remember about when it ended, we were in line, just like we were in line coming into the service, we were in line going out of the service. And I'll never forget the one guy, I didn't realize he was behind me. I hadn't paid attention. He says, I want you to look here. Look who I followed into this place, and look who I'm going behind after this place. It was the same guy that followed me in our marching when we were doing the march and so forth, and around the basic training. And he was right behind me going out. That's what I remember about it. And I was out of it, and I got to go home. And that was a good time. But my home was just out off the base because my wife and I, that's where we lived at.
And I don't understand all the anti-military stuff I hear. When I came back from Nam, there was so much angst and anger toward the troops, and I found that difficult. It just because it wasn't the place I was in. I felt with a little better leadership, they could have stayed out of the thing in the first place.
I took a taxi cab from Milwaukee when I was coming home for Dad's funeral. And I got into the cab and I told that guy, I said I was coming home from Vietnam. He had the attitude like, so what? So what, What are you gonna say? I just sat there and stayed quiet until I got home. But there's a lot of other people that really cares though too. I mean, there's just as many that cares as the ones that don't care.
And then I finally got a job as working in concrete and then bricklaying. And then I went to vocational school to try to get a job because I was starving. My family was starving. And my wife was pregnant and I don't know if we had the baby yet or not. Anyway, it was extremely hard. I worked on a strip job for a little while. That didn't last long. The owner's son needed a job because he's getting married to his daughter. And I just struggled. It was a struggle. People didn't seem to care about military people. It seemed as if they hated us for some reason. I don't know why. I never could figure that out. It's not like that today, especially in the Vietnam era. I had a good friend of mine. He died of Agent Orange. They called them baby killers and stuff. It's hard. People just don't accept you. And what do speak with you, they think you think you're something that you're not. Like you think you're something. But I don't. I'm just a regular person like everybody else. They just treat you different. I don't know. It's like I said in the beginning, I think sometimes they hate you when you come home. But that was back in the 70s.
There's been a lot of guys hurt, maimed, everything else, whatever you want to call it. Them's the injuries you can see right off. But there's other injuries too that you don't see. It's inside you. It's up here. And them injuries, I'm not saying anything wrong about them other injuries. They're bad too, but these injuries inside you are just as bad. It's like that PTSD I got and that leukemia I got. I'm still living. Lord only knows why He's keeping me alive so long. But I'm just hoping someday I can forgive myself. But right now I can't. It's just hard to explain, you know. As the old saying goes, you gotta feel it to understand. A lot of people out there, they don't understand that stuff. They'll look at you and say, well, there's another wacko come home.
And after we come home, I was with one of my cousins. Went to get some, what they call slate rock. And you back up underneath the tipple and they dump it into the bed. Well, I'm sitting in the passenger seat of the truck. He had gotten out. And when they dropped that, it went boom. And my first instance was to the ground. And I stopped myself when I got down to the chair. Just before I hit the ground, I grabbed the door and said, no, you're not in Vietnam. So that just the thing that you learn to get used to with and go from there. Different times. You're an ambulance and so forth or anything of that nature. It kind of reminds me of Vietnam. You're a helicopter chopper. The blades of our barracks was right near the pad for helicopters coming in on the Vietnamese side, and those helicopters would come in. You hear those blades are chopping like you hear them here. Every time I hear that, I think of Vietnam because that was a constant to go with, and during the fireworks going off, you hear big booms going off. That's a Vietnam reminder. There's a lot of things that reminds you of it. That just don't, when you don't forget it, it don't go away.
My stepson Wes, it happened along about 9/11 when 9/11 happened. And Wes told my wife, Barb, told her, said that he noticed a change come over me then. And so they're thinking something right there snapped inside of me. See, up until that time, I'd done my best to forget everything. I didn't want to remember nothing. And I couldn't tell you anything until I got with, 9/11 happened and all that. It seemed like something just unlocked everything in me. I mean, watching MASH on TV used to be my favorite show, but I can't stand to watch it now. Showing them wounded boys on there and stuff, and I just can't, anything kind of military, I can't watch it. It just gets to me.
It made me appreciate things better and not take anything for granted. And people really don't know what it is like living in a third world country until they're in there. You can't express it enough to let them know how good they've got here, regardless of the circumstances. And I know there's some bad circumstances here, but you don't have somebody standing over you and guarding you and just, you can't do this or you can't do that. People really need to appreciate their freedom and appreciate the veterans who go through it, because it's not that you're looking for appreciation. It's just that it changes your way of looking at life. Don't get caught up too much in all the small things. Move on.
I'm more compassionate now about people. I know as a Marine, a lot of people think I'm trained to kill people, which I am. And I'm supposed to be good at it. But I'm also trained to save people's lives, too. That people don't understand that. I'm more humble now. Watching the news on television, it breaks my heart sometimes. Just see how destructive society has come. Not just from a military standpoint, like I'm trying to get across, but as a human being, I can see now how the world has changed and how it's changing. So I have to give credit to the military for my understanding.
It was a blessing being involved in the process and meeting good people. My commanding officer was a captain who got 2 Silver Stars in Vietnam. And so I knew a lot about what was happening over there and so forth. But again, I tell folks today, if you get a chance to serve in the military, serve. You may not ever end up in combat. You may never end up, but you can get a lot of advanced training in the military for other things. They have all sorts of things in addition to the GI Bill and so forth, and getting you involved in school later. But I've been so blessed and so many times in my life, and when I sat back and started recounting these things yesterday, I thought, oh my gosh, this was a blessed time in my life. It was, and I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the training for commitment and tell folks that being enlisted in the military is not a bad thing. It can be probably the most educational and informative and wonderful experience of your life if you use it that way.
But the military is a good opportunity, and the GI Bill is really beneficial. They we really need to get college educated these days in order to survive and do your best. Make sure you do your best and keep your nose clean. People get in trouble all the time, and then they wind up paying for it. And a lot of times they don't think of the consequences before they do it. But the best thing to do is to get an education so that you can get a job.
The Marine Corps has shaped me in a way that I can understand and accept a lot of things I couldn't accept in the past. And the old saying, I'll always be a Marine, which is true. But I don't have to be the way I was. There comes a time when a human being has to be compassionate with others, or to others, and forget about the past and your chauvinistic ways. Maybe I could put it better that way. I grew up believing women should have babies and cook and stuff like that, which is not true anymore. Homosexuals was a sinful thing. The only true thing was to be a God-fearing person. But my situation in the Marine Corps has given me the training, not to understanding, but it's helped me understand that that's not the way things are or should be. As a matter of fact, they aren't today, and they never will be again. I call it the old days.
I learned more discipline. One thing I learned more than anything is discipline. And even sometimes you want to fly off the handle when somebody gets mad or something there. Stop, take your breath, and study it over before you start flying off the handle. Find out why they're mad at you. Stuff like that, you know. And take responsible. If you got any responsibilities, take care of them. Don't expect someone else to do it. Because, I mean, it's important. A lot of guys think they're a big, bad, tough man and everything, you know, but when the going gets down, they expect someone else to take care of their responsibilities. And I don't believe that. I mean, if I'm just like making debts, children, stuff like that, I mean, if you're involved in all that stuff, you need to do it. Take care of things. Don't expect everyone else to do it. I mean, the Marine Corps taught me more than what they realized. They really did. But respect, honor, trust, I mean, all that stuff goes together. It's all important. And the Marine Corps has really, really, really showed me different things.
Whatever you do it to your best of your ability. Do not back off, don't slack off, just do it the best you can and be thankful for what you got. Be thankful for every day. Be thankful for your family. And when the family, a lot of times you'll hear that couples will meet like my wife and I did in the military. They don't last long. And I was told, this thing ain't going to last long, Roger. And we still got 50 years in now. So I think it lasts, but there's tough times, but you don't give up. You don't back down. You keep going. And that military will teach you that if you allow it to. And that's one thing I wish our country had. where everybody, anyone, now this is pure my thoughts. Everyone needs to attend the military for a couple of years just to see get the discipline done in their life.
No matter what life dishes you, you can overcome it. You can be a better person. And you can learn to live in the present day that you're in.
The only thing I can think about is that if you have a veteran in your life who is combat experienced, that you be patient with them, that you be kind to them, and give them respect that is due, mainly because they still think they don't fit in. They still think they're not quite acceptable. It's just, that's the way it is. But if you become comfortable with yourself, then you can let other people be comfortable with you in their presence. Try to make other people feel comfortable in your presence. Try not to be judgmental and condescending. It's infantile. It's like kids. Try to understand people. Read the nature, study the nature of people. Know that anybody can do anything, evil or good, and so be the best you can be. Treat yourself kind, respect yourself, and then have respect for others. But veterans of all, you'll find us sometimes shifty, sometimes alone, sometimes anxious. We do have a problem with anxiety. Sometimes it hits and we don't know why it hits. But we learn to live with ourselves if we study ourselves. But so just respect your veterans, and respect your veterans as far as parents and uncles and elders who have a lot of wisdom, And if they give you bad advice, just take it as counsel and then find others. But my experience in education was, of course, but then I grew up in a very poor family with 9 kids, and it was very difficult to find that I was really somebody that could do something, because I equated poverty with being stupid, and that is absolutely not the case. But it took me a while. But I never quit, and that's another thing. I really like what Winston Churchill said to the class of boys when he got up and said, never give up, never give up, never, never, never give up. And that's the thing. If you watch these athletes, you look at them, they go with reckless abandon and they never give up. They struggle to get across the finish line, across the goalpost, across the tennis net. They don't quit. Why should you quit? I don't want to rust out. I would much rather wear out or burn out.
you.